So, I think we are live, guys. Let me know if we are. It's all a bit of a spontaneous stream. Therefore, I also have to apologize for the slight delay. All right. Let's get things started. Yes, I think it's looking good. Hi, Christoph. Welcome to the stream. Hi, Linux. Linux Bricky, also back. Nice to have you in the stream again. It's been some time since we did a more spontaneous stream. I did cover the Vienna Ladies Cup just a couple of days ago. I mean, by now it was also like 1 to 2 weeks ago. Hey Mohammed, also back in the stream. I'm doing well, thank you. I spent some nice days for Christmas and I thought it would be cool to have a look together at the final day of the Rapid Wall Championship. There were many interesting games. And of course, the thing is that the tournament broadcast with Peter Lecko, Maurice Ashley, and Jovanka Hauska is pretty cool to watch. But what I'm personally missing there is that they are, well, of course, they are focusing on a selection of games. But in this stream, I'm planning to go through as many games as possible because there's so much happening. So many strong players are playing against each other. So I thought it would be cool to just go through as many games as we could. And as we speak, I think there are 2 more rounds which should be played. And the next one, round number 12, is supposed to start in 2 minutes. Give me 1 second. All right. Very bad tournament for Rapport. Yeah, I've also seen that. I mean, there are always some players that are, of course, not doing so well in this tournament. That is always a thing. Leonhard, you did bet on Sindarov. How much money are you gonna lose? Yeah, I guess he has no chances. He did win in the last round though against Maksudlu. Need to beat Artemiev and then Carlsen in the last game. Yeah, so he is playing against Artemiev in the next round. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, Chinese players. I mean, there is this one. How is he called? I know which one you're talking about. It should be Meng Yihan. He just drew against Aravind. I guess that this view is anyway fine. I was thinking of switching in between those 2 views for the individual board. If you guys have any preference, let me know. Otherwise, we can definitely also stick to that one. Let me know which view you are preferring. 30 euros, okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, it's 20x, yeah, wow. Yeah, Meng is doing pretty well. Meng is doing pretty well, that's true. Hello Za, welcome to the stream. So round number 11 has just concluded. I was actually watching the game between Magnus Carlsen and Hans Niemann live, but I missed the end of the game and it looks like we have another Rook endgame. I actually already started compiling a database of interesting Rook endgames from the tournament because there were so many of them that were quite interesting. I don't know, I had the impression that in the Rapid, maybe also in the Blitz, we're gonna see many Rook endgames. I guess because people just don't have the time to calculate things in the middle game, often having a winning advantage there already, but then simplifying to Rook endgames because they tend to be a little bit simpler than some of the others. even though as we see that's not always the case. So Magnus played a Gioco Piano against Niemann, who went for the a5 line. I think this was all more or less standard. And I was watching the live commentary by Peter Lecco and Maurice Ashley, and they were pointing out that c takes d5 apparently was the right way to continue here. And after knight e3, now knight h4 was important to exchange the knight on f3, then to go after the d4 pawn. After which black should be fine. Instead, Niemann sacrificed the pawn like this, which also felt pretty natural to me. But Magnus in the end was a pawn up. Here he could have taken on d4. Still, all of that is going to be suffering because there is always this weakness on c6. Yeah, so I saw the position then somewhere around here, and Magnus went for knight d6, going for this exchange. And it reminds me a bit about one game which he had against, I don't recall who it was against, but I think it was in this year's Norway chess, where there was also this exact endgame with queen and rook against queen and rook, and also with a b pawn, I believe, where Magnus also managed to win. And interestingly, now he went for the rook endgame, which appears to be winning now since the king is already so active. And also the rook next to the pawn is of course better than the rook in front of the pawn. And Magnus just started pushing. And yeah, after h5, h4 is a nice move because now the rook always has the f4 square available and Magnus can just continue pushing the b pawn. Nice technical game by the former world champion. Yu Yangyi versus Vashiela Graf. That was also from the previous round. I did not see that just yet. Thanks for pointing that out, David. Wow, in that game there were a couple of double question marks. So it was a Grunfeld. It's all more or less theory. We're gonna jump to the end game, I assume. Wow, many dark square weaknesses there. Yu Yangyi was completely dominating, it seems. But yeah, interesting. It reminds me a bit about this game by Nigel Short, who then ran with the king to h6. But here that's not a plan because the queen is still covering that square, but black is completely paralyzed. But it's not so easy for white to break through. Oh, interesting. How did Yu Yangyi lose this though? f4 was the right way to break through, but he didn't go for it. And all of a sudden it started to turn around. This was the rook endgame, I guess you're referring to. Yeah, white is drawing chances here, but shouldn't let in the king, it appears. Rook a5 going after this pawn. Still some chances there later on, I think. Yeah, but this rook endgame is very complicated and concrete. h6, so if this, then h7. White is queening. King f3, only way to hold. Because now rook h1. Yeah. White can draw like this and continue checking. And now king d6 was winning. Because this just... Oh, rook h7. And here, rook h5, and the king cannot go here because of check. And rook c5. Interesting. Yeah, I guess there were many games from that round. I also briefly saw the game between Dubov and Shimanov, which was quite picturesque. That Dubov's queen ended up here on h2. And looks like Shimanov managed to convert this. It was a nice game by Shimanov, actually. Yeah, Grishuk won in the last round with white. What happened there? This very modern line. in the Ruy Lopez, where white then takes on c6. Many people are playing like this now. I did in fact also mention that in my video about the World Cup, about the opening ideas. I bought your King's Indian courses. They're really amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And I'm glad that you enjoy the course. Hope that you're gonna have a lot of success with it. Yeah, so yeah, Van Forest, always interesting to watch. He did have actually quite an interesting King's Indian idea himself in the round before that, in round number 10. Yeah, pretty funny game. Anyway, I think that the next round probably has started already. No, it hasn't. It's just starting right now. Which probably is a good way for us to continue. Magnus is playing with black pieces against Erdogmos, as you see here. So these are all the top boards. Let me know if there are any picks which would interest you the most out of this. Just got a notification on Twitter that apparently in the women's section, one medal is already guaranteed for an Indian player in the female section, with Hampi Konero being tied for first, and Savita, who I believe is quite a young, talented player, is half a point behind. And I guess that they are playing against each other, but I didn't have a look at that before. So Magnus playing his Marshall, it appears. Yeah, if you guys want me to check out any games in specific, then make sure to let me know. We see a Berlin Endgame by Maxim Vasilograph. That's always something I'm quite interested in. 8 commentators, but you're not in them. It appears not. I don't know why. Probably because I'm not logged in with my account, but I can fix that if you give me just 1 second. Okay, let's switch to this view for just a minute, and in the meantime I will change my account and log into my official one, because I was on my private account. That's actually a good idea. I'll do that. All right, authenticator. And I'm in. Why did the color just change of the boards? Where can I change the color in Leeches? So I'm back in this view. Can you check Geary? Yeah, in just a second. Many of you are pointing out that we should head towards Geary's game, but before we do that, I really want to change the color of the pieces. Yeah, this is how I like it. I prefer that. All right, so Geary, you were saying, where is Geary playing? He's playing against Henriquez, but not so much has happened there just yet. Still in the opening phase, what appears to be a G3 King's Indian. Magnus, in fact, not going for the Marshall, but instead for the Briar. Yeah, Anish actually goes for a system which I personally quite like myself here with D3, which aims to play reversed closed Sicilian. Basically, if we look at this opening, which used to be popular back in the day for white, black always plays this d6, knight f6, short castle, and generally quite okay for black there. Like black is pretty comfortably equalizing. And therefore white can also play that just with the tempo up. And I personally like to do that myself as well, because black does not have his typical plans as well here, and white in the meantime can go rook b1, b4, b5, and just gain space on the queen side like this. Yeah, a5 stopping b4 for the moment, but typically white goes rook b1, a3. And after that b4 anyway, as Giri is also doing. Yeah, so what about the other games? What is Magnus doing? So Magnus actually here did not go for the marshal, even though his opponent allowed it with c3. Quite sure that he just wanted to avoid some more concrete lines there, and instead goes for the briar with knight b8, knight d7. I think this is all still sort of standard theory, but a5 is probably more of a rare move. Typically they go g6 here. Maybe also c5 is a move here, not entirely sure. Maybe not here. Yeah. But he goes a5 instead. Erdung Mus, who is of course another player to watch out for. I'm not sure that he's, probably I assume that he's still in title contention as well. Like if he wins this game, then he probably has pretty good prospects. Yu Yangye and Grabnev already drew. Yeah, you are right. What happened in this game? So here Grabnev, well, Yu Yangye actually offered a draw after d5. And white accepted. Yu Yangye, I mean, he must be quite upset about losing the previous game against MVL. So from that regard, it is understandable. Yeah, we see another 4 knights scotch between Sanal Wahab and Andreikin. Exactly the same opening like in Yu Yangye's encounter. Sanal plays that quite often, I think. The modern line, h3, queen f3, keeping the bishop on c1 still flexible, sometimes going to f4, sometimes still going to g5, but mostly to f4. Knight d7, I did check that from the black side myself. I think this is supposed to be one of the best systems for black, intending knight e5 or knight c5. So knight c5 here, and I think what white typically does here is to go for something like this. And after that, it's pretty drawish. Black can also go back with the bishop to f8. I think this was a game between Hovanesyan and Pragnananda at the FIDE World Cup, which ended in a draw. Yeah, what about other games? Sindarov drew, is that possible against Artemiev? That game already ended in a draw. After e5, Sindarov offered a draw here. So we do see that in the last few rounds, the players just wanting to secure a good prize. Especially, I think we're going to see that in the Blitz section because they changed the format and now we see this playoff in the end. So I assume that there we're specifically going to see a couple of draws with players just wanting to secure the top 10 placement in the end. Yeah, now I see that actually on Lichess, I am the only English stream apart from FIDE, which is pretty cool. Apart from that, we have Spanish, Turkish, Russian. Yeah, 9 streams in total. Yeah, so Magnus played this idea with a5 here. Again, I'm not such a big expert on all of this prior stuff. Hello from Brazil. Hello back. Welcome to the stream. So he goes for a5, bishop d3 and now b4. Bishop d2 and now Magnus is thinking. And c6 played. So what is this idea if I just take the pawn? Then he wants to take on d4, and knight takes d4 will run into c5, so this is the idea. And apart from that, I guess he wants to give his queen a square on c7. Yeah, Dominguez and Shimanov drawing, joining the drawers. I've also just seen that. What happened there was a Slav exchange. Shimanov doing very well in this tournament. I know that he is an expert in Rapid and Blitz, but still his tournament so far has been very impressive. I mean, look at his score. Winning against Adrakin, winning against Giri, winning against Caruana. Only losing to Niemann as it appears. Drawing Sindarov, winning against Dubov in the last round, that was a nice game too. Yeah, and here Dominguez just offered a draw. So as I said, the players just want to guarantee good prize money, I think. Okay, also with Black Dominguez, now he's going to be white in the final round. He can approach the game solidly if he needs to for a good placement, then he can try to push for a win. So it's understandable from his point for sure. Nepo is playing against Prague, by the way, which is another interesting endgame. That came from a Ruy Lopez, a6, bishop a4, knight g e7. Short castle, knight g6. Whoops, that was too fast. d4, e takes d4, knight takes d4. By the way, Black's idea here is if c3, then he wants to go for d5. That's the whole point of this system. I'm just thinking now, what is supposed to be the critical line here? I think actually this is one of them. And bishop c5 is one move. The other move is knight takes d4, queen takes d4, b5. And this. When Black is actually already threatening c5 followed by c4, which would trap the bishop on b3. This is what many people are checking nowadays. Bishop c5 is another approach. Bishop a7 here. That was again too fast. Knight takes c6 is possible, which goes to this endgame basically by force. With white definitely having the better chances here, unless Black can get some activity quickly. It appears that knight f3 was not so precise because now Black can fight for the d2 square. But I'm still not sure about some endgame like this. Like if Black takes here, this could be quite dangerous for Black if white is able to consolidate. Because the problem for Black is always that he has an extra pawn on the queen side, but it's a doubled pawn, and in long-term prospects, the doubled pawn is not really gonna do anything. So still, I think that Nepo does have some chances here, unless here rook e8 might be a smart move, and now bishop takes f3 cannot really be stopped. After which the dark squares are all gonna be pretty weak. What do you think of the Zaitsev system in the Spanish? In my opinion, one of the most sharpest and complex position in the Ruy Lopez. Yeah, definitely. The only problem, if you think about it like this, if we head back to that game, so the Zaitsev system here is for Black to go bishop b7, and after d4 now rook e8. The only problem to some extent is that white can now go for a repetition of moves. And it's difficult for Black to avoid that if you want to go for the Zaitsev system. And the other problem is I think there's supposed to be also a line, if you want to start with h6 and then go for the same, then the problem is that you don't get bishop f8 in time, and now white is able to go for this typical maneuver knight f1, knight g3, and since the bishop is still on e7, now you cannot take on d4 and cannot take on e4 here. So that's why if you go for this, that can be a bit risky. Which is, by the way, not possible for white in this move order, because if knight d2 now, bishop f8, and here knight f1 is not possible anymore because the e4 pawn is already attacked, and therefore Black can just take and take on e4 next. What about Giri? Good question. Let's check in with Magnus' game first, though. It appears to be equal. So after c6, Erdungmos went knight to f5, and now it's Magnus to move. But let's head back to Giri's game, yeah? Since many of you guys want me to check that out. Giri, where are you? Where is Giri? Which board is he doing now, guys? Which board is Giri? Cannot find him. Where are you, Anish? Ah, board 11. Now I got it. All right, so this is where we left it off. A5, rook b1. By the way, there are also other approaches. Yeah, 11. Thank you, Phoenix. There are also other approaches for white here. I think at some point I checked something like this for white, with the idea that if black goes for c6, which he then also did in the game, then white can go for some setup with e4. And now h3 is already quite useful, and the pawn on c6 is blocking black a bit, because after e4, black would generally like to put the knight to c6 to fight for the d4 square. But here this is not so easy, and white can then slowly prepare to go for d4 later on with bishop e3, queen d2, rook d1 to maximize the position and then go for d4 later. But Giri chose the typical plan with a3, but now he went for e4. And b4. Take, knight c7. Yeah, I would definitely like to throw in h3 a bit earlier, because not to give, I don't know if this even is an idea for black, it appears it is, to just exchange the bishop and then plant the knight to d4. Anyway, black did not go for that. Tries to fight for the squares like this. I'm not sure that Anish is feeling so great about his position now. If he went h3 before and then h4. I'm also not sure if this inclusion is so great for white, because the knight on e6 is covering the weak g5 square pretty well, but the g4 square could be weak in the long run. Yeah, actually, let's head on to Gukesh's game. How is he doing overall in the tournament? I thought he's still on board 10, but I assume that he's been definitely hoping for more this tournament. He's playing against Yesipenko in this game. Was a knight with bishop d3, e5, knight d2. I saw also one game by Grishuk, one round earlier, I think it was, when Grishuk played against, it was some Indian, but I don't recall who it was against. And his opponent went here bishop e2, basically arguing that the dragon is so bad that he's even gonna happily play it with an extra a6. This is modern chess, guys. This is modern chess. Gukesh plays it a bit more principled with e5, knight e2, bishop e7, castle, and a3. I guess the idea is that whenever knight c6 comes, white can go knight d5, and now here there's not going to be any knight b4. That's the only idea I can see so far. After b5 it also makes sense, because b4 is going to be prohibited. And if bishop e6, then he goes for f4. Interesting idea. I'm not sure this has been played before. I think this is typically how the theory goes. Knight g3, bishop e6, and now knight d5. Some position like this they were debating at some point. a3 by Yesipenko, interesting. And then a4. b4, knight d5. Very typical knight of position. a5, a typical idea to fix, first of all, the weakness on a6 and also the weakness on b4. When white can go after it with bishop d2, rook a4 at some point. Knight d7, bishop c4. f3 is an interesting move. Why did he go for that and not bishop e3 first? I'm just curious. Maybe he wanted to keep options open for his bishop. I just don't really see the point to play f3 generally. I guess he wants to avoid knight e4 for good. Like if you go for something like this, then knight e4 will come and the knight is heading to the c3 square. Yeah, so the live position is this, and yeah, it's a fighting game. Chances for both sides. Meanwhile, you would like me to go back to Magnus's game. So this is where we last saw the position after knight f5. Magnus took and went bishop a6. Take, take, queen c2, queen c7. b1, rook b6. Yeah, I'm gonna pick Magnus here. I think he's gonna... I don't know if he's gonna win though, but I'm 99% sure that he's not gonna lose here. It's just his type of position, and he's generally very in a very nice form in this tournament, playing pretty nice chess. And also look at the clock situation. Erdogan's already down to 7 minutes. By the way, is the board view okay, guys? Let me know, because I could also switch to this view. Let me know what you guys would prefer. Yeah, let me know what's better. Nepo is close to practically losing. How did that happen so quickly? Wow. So in a position where I thought that only white is playing for something, knight f3 was a slight misstep perhaps, because it actually went c5 first, a3 and only then bishop g4. I think he just wanted to cover the d4 square so the knight cannot go there. Rook d1, take, take, knight f4. And now c4, and now knight d3 is coming, yeah. It's starting to become pretty unpleasant. It looked so nice for Nepo. And this still has to be right. Knight d2 also very natural. And maybe it's not as good as I thought it would be, because black does have a lot of activity. Maybe I misevaluated it. Still, if you go knight b3, for example, and then rook d1 on the next move, how bad can it be? If knight f4, then g3, yeah. And if knight e5, with the idea of knight c4, and if this, I guess I have rook d1. Yeah. This is exactly what you want to avoid with black now. The bishop has to drop back to c8, and then white can really stabilize. For example, bishop e2, preventing knight c4, and then start pushing some pawns. Now in the live position, yeah, it's looking pretty dangerous for white. I don't even know if he wants to take on f3, but taking followed by knight e3 already looks pretty promising. The view is fine, okay. That's good. So he didn't take, he went back, bishop h5. g4, bishop g6, knight d2 is one idea, yeah. Yeah, white is definitely suffering, because you cannot take on c4, because then e4 would be hanging. Nepo should have gone f4 instead of queen takes d8. Yeah, I saw that the computer gives that, but I don't really blame him for that, because you just want to get queens off the board immediately, because endgames are typically quite pleasant for white. And it was interesting that black was so fast with the activity, because it seems like black is still so far from developing, but white is too, so that was the problem here. f4 would have been more precise, yeah? And it appears that black anyway cannot really keep queens on the board, because even with queens, it's even more dangerous for black. Queen d4, rook a8, knight d2, the queen can drop back to e3, and the knight doesn't have any active prospects. Van Forest and Keimer both not doing well. Yeah, they're not even in the top 30 boards. Specifically Keimer must be quite disappointing for him. How is my national team colleague Kirill Alexienko doing, sticking with his Italian with knight c3, one of his trademark systems. Always interesting to watch him there. He's playing against Pranish M. Crazy what happened in the opening there. I think Pranish is pretty well known to be pretty crazy player as far as I know, and this game definitely confirms that. Queen A1, what a move. What do you think about that, guys? Queen to A1. You prefer the other view? Then let me switch to that. Sure. I also thought that it should be better, but since none of you complained earlier, I was sticking to the other one. Yeah, also with Rapport, yeah, I saw that some of the games he had, they were really heartbreaking for him. Yeah. So let's stick to this board view. And if we're having a look at the whole view with all of the games, then I can still switch. Yeah, thanks, Daniel. I hope you prefer it like that now. Hope that this is good. Queen A1 was a cool move by Alexenko. And after bishop c4, queen d4, it's probably game over. The pin. Queen to A1, just protecting the rook on b1 and getting ready to move the knight, after which also bishop takes a6 could be an idea. That was a nice idea. I'm not seconding for anyone in this tournament. Generally, it's quite uncommon for this event to bring a second. I went with Pentala Hare Krishna to the 2022 World Rapid and Blitz to help him there, but it was mostly for company. Like, it's not really possible to help your players so much in between the rounds. There's never so much time, so it's generally not so easy. Adam Kozak, my good friend from Hungary, same age as me. He was playing also in the Vienna GM tournament. I invited him there. Very good in Rapid and Blitz. Let's see what he's doing against Sina Movahed, who is another specialist in faster time controls. And yeah, pretty boring looking position, but c6 and e6 preparing knight to d5. Now a lot of pieces are getting off the board. Another interesting endgame. Faustino Oro is playing now against Hare Krishna. We're gonna have to check that game out later on. Any reason you're not playing? Well, first of all, to be completely honest, I did not even qualify if you're precise, because I do not have 2550. I'm pretty close to it now, with my life rating being 2541. But previously I qualified always by winning an Austrian championship, either Rapid or Blitz or Classical. But this year I didn't. I'm pretty sure that I could have asked for a wild card, and probably I would have gotten it. But I just wanted to stay home for once during this time of the year. Like the last time I could remember while I was home during the time between Christmas and New Year's Eve was many years ago. So I just preferred to stay home, relax a bit, and produce some content for the event, which is also a lot of fun and definitely less stressful than playing. Yeah, so let's get back to Magnus' game. And he has already successfully created a weakness on the d4 square. So how did that happen? We saw the position here, takes, and c4, quite a committal move. Weakening the d4 square, but at the same time, of course, opening up the bishop on d2. Still, a more solid approach like bishop e3, I would maybe also be thinking of, maybe not immediately, but at some point just to play g3, king g2. maybe in a position like this, yeah, it seems quite equalish. If knight c5, I can at the very least go knight e2 to protect e4. c4 is a bit risky. I'm curious how Magnus is going to make use of that. Goes f6. a4, another nice move to stop knight b3, which would challenge the strong knight on c5. Shakhriyar is worse on board 4 against Hans Niemann. We're gonna go to that game immediately. Hans Niemann not going for e4 in that game, which surprises me a bit. Typically he's an e4 player. What I've noticed in this tournament is that many players are going back to the classical ways of playing with the Queen's Gambit. Also Magnus has played it in quite a few games. And my theory is that some 100 years ago, players played this non-stop. I recently went through some of Capablanca's games, and he had this match against, who was this American player? What was his name? Marshall, of course, Frank Marshall. And they had this opening basically in every game, and they always just went for this, which I thought it was fascinating to some extent, because already back then, with almost no knowledge existing, they went for one of the best openings in almost all of their games and actually developed a lot of theory there. I remember that Capablanca already then went for this Lasker system with h6, knight e4 in many of the games. And my theory is that now, with so many of the other lines already being played, we're going back to the basics, basically, with those very classical systems being played again. And I think there's still a lot of creativity to be found in the classical Queen's Gambit systems. Yeah, so very classical play here with the Karlsbad structure. And I wonder how Hans grinded something out here. b5 was played, yeah, typical way to respond to the minority attack. Fixing a weakness on b4. Of course, also c6 is going to be weak, but that's the trade-off. I guess that Hans tries to get his knight to d3. No, he didn't do that. Instead, he went after the c6 pawn. And now is going to be ready to take on h5 on the next move, I assume. So queen takes h5 is working now. When a computer gives white a winning advantage. Are they going to repeat though? What is he not liking here? g6 maybe? Queen takes d5. Rook takes e2, rook takes g6. But also this should be possible, right? Just to stabilize. And Shakhriyar now goes for queen f6, which the position has changed a bit now. Queen f6 takes. Even g takes f6 could be considered a very concrete way of playing to keep the knight on e4. Could imagine Shakhriyar going for that even though knight takes f6 is probably a healthier continuation. Erigaisi already won against Mamedov already a couple of minutes ago, with 13 minutes on the clock at the end of the game. What happened here? Arjun always coming up with pretty interesting ideas in the opening. I think I've never had a look at d takes c5 here. Classical way of playing is c takes d5, of course. d4, knight a4. Knight c6, apparently not the best. Computer likes bishop to d7 here. Can I also go for this? Apparently that's not so good. Can go for something like this, for example, and then play for the bishop here. The thumbnail is wrong of the stream. Sorry about that, guys. I need to change that. Just give me 1 second and I'll change it. Thank you for letting me know. It was all a bit spontaneous. As it is the latest cup, yeah. I'll try to change it if I can. Because I even made the thumbnail earlier. Yeah. Now it should be changed. Still loading, but I think it should be done in a second. Yeah, let me know, guys, if you can see it now, but I think it should be working again. I mean, the thumbnail should be corrected, that's what I'm saying. Can you give us advice what is more beneficial for intermediate players to play close positions with clear strategical ideas or wild open positions where every time there is some randomness? Thank you, Nexus Knight, by the way. Thank you. Good question. I guess it depends a bit what type of player you are. And even if you're a positional player, I guess it still makes sense to try and go for some sharper positions sometimes to at least try to get better at it. But I would still urge you to stick to your style in general. Like I don't think anyone needs to artificially go for some style which is not truly theirs. Even though if you would like to be an attacking player but you simply are not, then I think it's just important to accept the truth and go for the type of positions which you play best. And in the meantime, try to work on the other things because you cannot always get the position you like. Yeah, so Arjun won very quickly in this game. With a pretty interesting idea in the opening. This d takes c5 is pretty unbelievable. So computer says that e5 is possible or bishop d7 here, threatening queen a5. After which I'm not sure what white is planning. Maybe b4, bishop takes e4, queen takes a4, knight d7. It's an interesting idea, actually. Black needs to be pretty precise here. Never seen that before. Yeah, Giri's game is a mess. Niemann appears to be equal now against Shakhriyar. Nepal's still holding on against Prague, being how many pawns down at the moment? 2 pawns down, yeah, but g5 and c5 are hanging. And after c5 falls, also a6 could be weak. So I'm not sure that Nepo is actually worse here anymore. He did go for this g4 knight d2, take king e2, activating the king. h5 was wrong, it appears. King f8 instead. And just king e7, and if this, then only then h5. And now anything can happen here, especially with Prague being so low on time. Serrana drew against Caruana, by the way. Pretty interesting material imbalance. Yeah, white was completely winning earlier. That was another queen's gambit. Caruana going for knight d7. This line with knight f8, yeah. Typical idea to go knight e6 or knight g6 next. Pretty typical cowspot position now. Typically they go bishop f5 in this position just to exchange the light squared bishop, but Fabi goes for knight f5. Very classical play by white, but this is exactly what black is typically trying to avoid with this weakness on c6. Actually a nice model game by Sorana, but here he had to go for queen c5. With the idea assumed that if black takes and goes rook b8, there's still knight d2, which is an important move. In the game then, this was played, and here black does have enough compensation, and white should probably even go for the repetition of moves, otherwise the king could be pretty weak. Okay, one is coming. Yeah, I was also talking about... I was already talking about Shimanov, that I am pretty surprised that he's doing so well in the tournament. Because I know that he is very good in Rapid and Blitz generally, but to perform this well, I definitely did not expect. But generally, the Russians in this tournament are doing pretty well overall. Like, we have Artemiev, who is still fighting for top places. We have Shimanov, who is also doing incredibly well. Nepo, of course. Grishuk was also doing pretty well, generally. Now he's on board 12, but still, and we have Yesipenko. By the way, it appears that Magnus is now completely winning. And so a4, this was the move I was praising earlier to stop knight b3. Knight f1, rook d8. And here he dropped the pawn already. It's very difficult to even find moves for white. Computer says king h2 is the best, and f3, and just sit and wait. h5, stopping knight g4. b6, rook d4. And rook d2 played. Magnus is in great shape. It's not like rook d2 is such a difficult move to find, but still. Shak blundered again. So Magnus now, if he finds queen d4, then the game is probably over, just to have that set. And some of you, if you are checking the standings, queen d4 played, now Magnus will win, king h6. If some of you are checking the standings, let me know what the current tournament situation now looks like. If Magnus is winning, what does he need to do in the next round to secure first place? Yeah, now Shakriar is suffering. Pawn down. Felix, do you know what happened with the 5 grandmasters, including Duda, who have dropped out of the rapid portion of the tournament? Will FIDE find them? I didn't even see that. So Duda dropped out. Who are the others that you're referring to? I mean, I only saw that Duda had a terrible event so far. But still, yeah, it's never so nice to drop out of these events. I mean, first of all, your opponents are, I don't know what happens with the tie breaks after that. Because typically the Buchholz are, well, you know how it works, huh? Like if someone played against Duda earlier and now he dropped out of the tournament, they probably don't get any more Buchholz from him. Why I'm not playing in the tournament, we already talked about that earlier. First of all, I didn't even qualify to the tournament because I don't have 2550 just yet. And I also didn't win any state championships this year, which was how I previously qualified. I guess I could have asked for a wild card from the organizer, but honestly, I was just quite happy to spend these days at home for once because I was always somewhere playing some tournaments between Christmas and New Year's Eve, so I'm happy to be home for once. I think Shaka is going to save this, by the way, just because the king is a bit exposed here and black is just quite active. The knight on e4 is strong, so I think they're going to go for a repetition here. Yeah, I do also think that they mess up the tie breaks. I think this is one of the main things. Hans, by the way, plays on, which is understandable for the tournament situation, because I guess a draw will not make him so happy. So it's Duda, Jacobson, Jobava, Ngoyen, I mean, and Sadvani. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame, especially with such a prestigious event. Definitely not the most sportive thing to do. I'm curious what is standing in the regulations about that. It never really came to question for me, because if I'm playing in such an event, I'm gonna play all the rounds no matter what. Ah, Shimanov beat Dura, that's why his tiebreaks are so bad. Uh-huh. You think they can drop out with any consequences, even in a tournament as prestigious as this one? Typically in open tournaments it's like this, but in this event, in those FIDE events, I'm not so sure, because there they tend to be a bit harsher, which I think is a good thing. Magnus, by the way, won now. Another rook endgame in the end, but with 2 pawns up for black, it should be easily winning. How is Raja Harshid with 2300 plus rating playing in the tournament? Well, as I said, you can seek for a wild card from the organizer, and typically if you're a grandmaster, in many cases you will get it. And of course, Raja Harshid is also pretty well known in the chess scene, so that definitely would help as well. Oh, that was a nice game by Magnus, yeah. As I said, this was probably one of the turning points where Erdogan went c4, which does create a weak square on d4, which Magnus was later on nicely able to use for himself. Niemann is still playing. It's one of the few remaining games. Dubov won against Hakobian. Also for Firouzja, I guess the tournament is pretty disappointing. He played on board 24 now. Losing to Mitraba Guha caused both Jubava and Sadvani to immediately drop out. Well, I mean, I think Mitraba Guha is a good player, no? But so they both dropped out of the tournament after losing to him immediately, or how did that happen? I see, Phoenix, yeah, so it's not written clearly in the regulations what will happen now. I guess then nothing will happen to them, yeah. Yeah, what did in fact happen to Magnus last year, because he did drop out of the Rapid, yeah? What happened there in the end? I don't think he was fined. So Hans is really pushing it here. I guess if this, what is his idea? A knight f8. Why is that so strong? I thought king e5 was the idea. And then some rook b6. Knight e5, king f6. Huh? That's actually pretty cool. There's no way to defend, huh? If g4, h4, and then knight f8 check followed by rook h7 is coming. So Shak went h4. Knight e5, king h6. If knight f8 here, then king f6, knight h7, and king e5 still runs into knight c5. King d4 was a tricky move, yeah. And actually a nice trap. I don't know if Hans saw that, this knight f8, but this is pretty sick, yeah. Knight h7 now, and then king e5, and then knight f8 followed by rook h7 is mate. And why is that immediately not winning with king e5? Just out of curiosity. And then he can still move the king, yeah, to the 7th rank. What happened is they begged him to play the blitz. Yeah, that's a different thing though. I was just curious about the consequences of not playing in the rapid, but I guess there were none. Yeah, maybe we're gonna see rook knight against rook in this game. King e3, rook g2, rook d6. Also knight d3 is possible, by the way. What rapid and blitz is harder to win than the candidates? Maybe. Difficult to evaluate that. So this is the game between Hans and Mamedyarov now, as you can see. Which definitely should end in a draw, but with knights, I mean, knights on the board still, some surprises could be there. By the way, Anish Giri won against Henriquez on board 11. Gukesh lost against Yesipenko. It's quite a big blow for him. And rook knight against rook is now a likely outcome, yeah? King g5 now, and Hans is still gonna try for 50 more moves. What should your username be? Does it have to be one of the two, or are you open for other suggestions too? d7, watch out for king h6. This would be a way to lose the game because king h6, knight g4 is there. King h5, rook h7 mate. But of course, Shak does not fall for that. Wow, only one move that holds the game now. Rook f3, only move. Because otherwise the g-pawn is actually in black's way. Like, if you go for something like this, if the 2 pawns would not be on the board, it's anyway a draw. But with the g-pawn here, now after this, there is no more check on the g-file. So here white is winning. So Shak needs to find rook f3 here. King e6. Because if this, then king e8 now. h3 on the board, so now Hans is winning. Knight f6. Or king g6. Hans is winning. Rook f3 check, king g6. That's crazy. Rook e7, now rook d8, and black can resign now. What a turnaround. Hans was definitely rewarded for fighting until the end in this game. So again, just to point that out, knight g4 was a nice try. Because black has to find rook f3 check, and now if king g6, then to run out with the king. King e8. Knight f6, rook f6 is there. My PGNs do have a little bit of text in them, but it's not like a chessable course, because I think generally the time is more well spent in in other areas, and you do still have the video for that, so I don't think it's entirely necessary. There are some comments there, some annotations, but not like with Chessable. I look like I didn't get enough sleep. Well, I just had something in my eye, so that's why I had to rub it. Maybe that has something to do with that too. Just had something in my eye. Yeah, so the final round should start, it says in 13 minutes. So maybe it's a good time to look at some of the games, which we didn't have a look at earlier. So MVL went for the Berlin Endgame. Bishop f4. Rook d1, knight h4. Yeah, this is still one of the lines, I think. h6. Yeah, I guess that MVL knew it basically until the end. Probably Wesley too. Yeah, and here they settled on a draw. Fausti versus Hare Krishna, I will check out in a second. I'm still stunned that that Hans won this game. Because yeah, I mean, something like this, huh? I guess that here you could even take on h3, yeah? Yeah, because this would even lose for white. Am I going to make opening videos on this tournament? Yes, I am planning to do that. I've already saved a lot of different ideas throughout the last few days. And I've also said in my Discord server, in case you guys haven't joined there, make sure to do that. You can find the link in my channel description. If you guys see any ideas which you think are interesting and which I should check out, let me know. You can also write it in the chat. Because there's so many games for me to check out that it's sometimes a bit difficult to catch up with everything. What happened in Abdus Satorov's game? Some strange English. Another rook endgame. Ah, okay, here they just made a draw. Seemed like pretty balanced game overall. Nothing much happened. Yeah, Hans is pushing a lot of those endgames, yeah? And generally is quite good at it. He is very good at it. Yeah, thanks, Regulus. Make sure to join the Discord. We're pretty active there nowadays. I'm not sure that the command is working just yet, Linux Bricky. I actually have no clue how to install that. I think I was already talking about that with a friend of mine at some point, but had difficulties with that. Yeah, Gukesh lost against Yesipenko, as you can see. Thank you, Shek. It's very nice of you. I try not to hide anything. That's true. Chat-wise or voice-wise? What do you mean? Gary 1. Krishuk draw. It's another strange Sicilian. Yeah. Nihal drew against Lazovic. Seemed like a pretty solid game. Yeah, here they settled the draw. Thank you, Linux Bricky. Thank you so much for sharing that. So any of you who want to join my Discord server, now it is in the YouTube chat. We don't really have a voice room in there just yet. If that can be interesting for the future, we can work on that. But for the moment, it's mostly about chatting, and I answer basically all of your questions, which you have there in the chat. Matlakov against Aronian. Aronian is really pushing it in this tournament. Like, he's playing quite a few highly creative systems, if you can call it like that. Huh? Must be some transmission error here. Strange. Dubov won with black. Should be entertaining. He actually went for this Antoshin variation, I think it's called. I think that Martinez won with this line against Abdusattorov in the World Cup with black. Bishop h7 is a nice trick, huh? King h7, g6 wins the queen. But of course, Dubov does not fall for that. That is a blunder. Anyway, already quite difficult for white. His king is also under a pretty heavy fire. Yeah, what about the other games? Rajabov lost with black against Rudik Makarian. Another pretty topical line. Okay. I would say let's have a look at some other games instead. What a finish in this game. What type of position is that? That's unbelievable. Robson against Piara. That's entertaining. Direct question, below 2400 Elo FIDE, should we work on opening details like you do, or something else is more important? How to balance? Thank you. Definitely don't spend as much time as I do. I mean, for me, it's, first of all, it's kind of a hobby. I really love to analyze. It's also my job. I work as a second, I create courses. So it's basically my everyday life to see what's going on and to keep up to date with all of the developments. But if you're trying to improve, then it should not be your main part, I would say. Still, I don't agree with what many people are saying, that you should not spend any time on openings, which is also kind of a common thing that people are saying, but it's simply not possible nowadays because everyone is booked up so well that you have to know at least something in the opening. Otherwise, you are just gonna get into bad positions all the time. At least if you're playing with the black pieces with white, it might be a bit easier. But some opening knowledge is definitely important. If you're under 2400, I would say that a good split might be something like 30% opening and the rest on other things, maybe 25% opening. The thing is also, if you're studying openings correctly, then in my opinion, it is at the same time sort of a middle game training. And generally studying openings, I think, should not consist of learning them by heart, but instead to analyze them and to understand them. And if you do that, it's really going to help your chess in general, because you're learning how to approach different structures and learning how to approach different positions, which is just going to help your chess in general. So if you have the right approach to studying openings and not just learn courses by heart, then I think it's going to help your chess anyway by quite a bit. But no matter which rating you are, I really disapprove of what many people are doing nowadays, which is basically just to learn openings by heart. I don't think that this is sustainable. Yeah, so this was a BR game. This was some Nimzo. Very interesting. I thought that this line is supposed to be a bit risky for black. Mostly because of, I thought this is what they were doing, and then the computer wants to go some h4. But also here it's showing that c6 apparently is possible, but I did not really like it for black last time I checked. What I've always liked for black was this system with queen c2, bishop b7, a3, bishop c3, knight c3, knight c3, queen c3. Those positions I always felt are pretty playable for black. I think at some point I even played this move. Rapport lost again. Oof. Having a pretty bad tournament there. This Martinez game, since you were talking about it earlier in this FIDE defense, it's definitely worse for black. Yeah, also Martinez was worse in that game, so I'm also not such a huge fan of the line. Yeah, that Dubov played earlier. So Pierre was actually losing in that game, but at some point this a pawn started rolling down the board. Yeah, it seems. And there's just no way to stop it. Yeah. Rook b8. Funny game. When is the next round supposed to start? Should be pretty quickly, right? Firouzja won against Zemlyansky. Zemlyansky, by the way, very, very talented. I think he's still quite young, but really strong. Saw some games by him. Also the previous one he won. That was, like, I checked that earlier. Was it against Iturrizaga? I think so. Like, also his understanding. I mean, let me jump to that moment a bit later. Yeah, this moment, it was really, I was really impressed, yeah? Where he went for knight c8 with the plan to go knight a7, knight b5. Would you guys see that in a game? Knight c8? I was really impressed by that. I think he's still quite young. Let me check. Does it say here? It doesn't, but still one game going on, it appears. Bortnik lost all 3 today. Funnily enough, I bought his course yesterday, which he worked on together with Naroditsky on the King's Indian. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but I was quite disappointed, at least from my first impression, because when I bought the course, first of all, it's like $80, which is quite a lot for the PGN. Then you cannot even export the PGN, so same like on Chessable. And the course only has like 4 different variations in there, so it's not even nearly finished. But still, it's up for purchasing, so that made me quite unhappy. I went through a couple of the lines and it looked pretty good, but it's a bit difficult for me to grasp how you can release a course without it actually being finished. No hate against him. I have nothing bad to say against Bortnik or Naroditsky, of course, but that was a bit Shocking. All right, so let me change the view here to this one. So this is... Which game is still going on? You guys have said that apparently some game is still ongoing. Is it? But it's not on Chessable, that's the thing. I bought the course on his own website, portnikchess.com. This is the game which Rapport lost, yeah? He lost with black against Maknev, who is, by the way, also a good player. Like, the thing in this tournament is that no matter who you are playing against... By the way, b5 is probably running into this, yeah? That's an issue. A double attack. However you're playing, you're still almost guaranteed to have a pretty good opponent. Even though that looked like a dream King's Indian for black. Just need to go all in. Bishop b6, queen h4, and let's go. Board 33, okay. Board 33 it's not. Because this is board 33. Ah, but this game. Move 132. This is probably the last ongoing game, yeah? I would be surprised if not. So they've already been moving around for basically forever. And I guess that in this position it had to be black who was playing for a win here, yeah? At some point, black pushed f4. Is that it? That was the point where black pushed f4, and king b4 was probably there for a mistake, because now you cannot capture back with the e-pawn, because then d4 is going to be hanging. So white can just wait like this, and then if f4, just e takes f4. I don't know why he had to go for king b4 here. Maybe he just thought it would be anyway a draw, but now those two pawns are quite important. Bobby Fischer, which King's Indian course do you mean? The one for Chessable or the one on my YouTube? Just curious. Yeah, that was a pretty weird game. I'm curious which opening did that come from. Okay, some queen's pawn game, yeah. And at some point, I guess, white sacrificed something on the queen side. What a position. Never seen anything like that. At which point did Pranav sacrifice, though? And how did he do it? Ah, he blundered this. Oh, a5 and the knight is trapped. But the best thing is that even this position is probably still a draw, yeah? And then he left the exchange on a6, yeah? Unbelievable game. Unbelievable game. Yeah, I meant chess base. Yeah, I meant chess base. King's Indian course. Yeah. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. What a game that was. Yeah, there is the 50 move rule, but I think it's like this, that I mean, it's difficult for the players to actually know when 50 moves have been played. By the way, now it appears that white does have some perpetual ideas. King f6 apparently a blunder. But the arbiters always have to step in after 75 moves have been played. Okay, so in this game, I mean, anything can still happen, because if queen b8, queen b7 will come, then, like for example here, king e7, queen b8, anything can happen here. Now rook g1. Rook f1. I guess after king g6, white still needs to repeat, but I mean, question is if black will play on. Will black play on or not? Objectively, the position is now a draw. By the way, my countryman, Konstantin Paira, who had a pretty good tournament so far, he won against Duda among others. Lost against Kozak earlier, and now against Martinez in this round. How did he lose this endgame? I don't like f3 here. Seems like a weakening move to me. Already, if someone is better here, it's probably black, because this rook on the second rank is a bit weak. I mean, passive, yeah? Not weak, but passive. Still. Should definitely be a draw still. If you continue waiting like this, what is black's plan? b5, this, I guess. You got the chess-based course. I wonder, I mean, if you don't mind sharing how you can get that one for free. I'll not go after you legally or whatever. I'm just curious how you can get courses nowadays, especially from chess-based for free. I didn't know about that earlier. So what happened here? Konstantin lost on time, or just stopped there? Grandelius, another friend of mine, drew against Mongolian player. How is Niels doing generally? Not so well, yeah. He saw his first game today against Hovaneshan, he lost, and now 2 draws. What was your question earlier? You mean about your name choices? I asked you another question myself. I asked you if those 2 were the only available options, or if you would be open to other suggestions about your name too. This game is still ongoing. Oh my god. So black decided to play on with knight g7, queen c7 check, king g8, bishop, rook g1. Apparently this would have been better. And then to take on b7. And if queen e8, then white is already winning. What a position, yeah? 2 pieces up for black, but... Oh my god. And at some point I can see white trying to play for win here. Well, you can always look for a name connected to your real name, if that is an option too. If not, then I would definitely prefer Nexus Knight. I think that sounds a bit cooler. And now white is winning, yeah? So black decided to play on here, yeah? I mean, that's a very risky decision, to put it mildly. Now it was really time to settle for a draw here with black. Because if white captures here, then black always has perpetual. I'm pretty sure downloading pirated content isn't illegal. Spreading it is. Yeah, that sounds about right now. What a position we have here. 1, 2, 3 pawns, but this will probably also fall. And king b5 is also coming. Back in the day, there were a couple of Telegram channels to download some pirated material, but I think they've all been closed now. Because I guess that companies like Chessable went after them because, of course, it's a huge deal it's a huge blow to their business if too many people are downloading the things for free. Ah, just the PGN you got there. Yeah, there should of course be still many ways to do that. Round 13 still hasn't started yet because those two players which we see here are are still playing. But it appears that Pranav somehow will manage to win the game. 157 moves have been played already in that game. Yeah, most of the Telegram channels are closed. I mean, there's no shame in admitting it. I've also downloaded some stuff from there. Yeah, I think it's just important to have some healthy mix. Yeah, because I mean, I'm an author myself, and I know that at least most of or some of the authors are putting a lot of work into their courses, and I think it's nice to appreciate the work. Yeah, that's the thing. If one channel closes, another one opens up. But this one on Telegram, it was open for quite a long time. Or there were a couple of them, but I think they've all been closed, and I didn't see any other ones that have been opened. Have I ever played a game that has went on for so long? I don't think I had a game over like 130 moves or so, but I definitely did have quite a few long games in my career. Yeah, of course. Yeah, the videos like on Chessable, for example, are generally quite expensive. Yeah. Now white should be winning here. King b6 should be good enough. Yeah, that's the thing. Like if you're younger, or I mean, also generally, like if you're based in a country where the wages is much less than in Western countries, then it's just basically impossible to afford the courses there. So don't really blame the people. Of course, it's not right to the authors, but It's difficult to afford. Varmadam lost against another, I think, pretty young player, Suyarov. Just curious what happened in that game. Appears that Varmadam also has a pretty tough tournament. Slowly got outplayed by his opponent. Speaking about modern chess, I started a collaboration with them quite recently. Let's get back to the other game, by the way. Where is this? This was it Pranav? Wrong letter. Yeah, now it's over. Queen e6 check. And Black is going to resign. So the round has concluded. I guess the next round is going to start in not a couple of minutes, but still pretty soon, because they probably are going for a quick break. In the meantime, I can explain, or I can talk to you about my collaboration with Modern Chess, which I think is going to be quite exciting. Next round pairings are out, by the way. I guess they're still not on leeches though. Yeah, still not there yet. So that means we can still check out some games perhaps. Giri made it back to the top board. I still don't have the pairings in front of me, but I guess we'll have that in a second. Magnus only a draw needed. I thought he's tied with Artemiev. And Artemiev won against Magnus, so doesn't the direct encounter count? Anyway, about modern chess. So as some of you might have followed, I participated in the Modern Chess Autumn Challenge, where there were a couple of different strong players. I was actually the lowest rated player of the whole field, and we competed against each other in the sense of who manages to create the best course. And the customers were deciding that by voting. And after that, Modern Chess has approached me to ask for a more long-term collaboration, and at least in the next few months, probably throughout the whole year, I'm gonna record quite a few courses there. I did in fact just record a couple of days ago, on the 25th, I recorded a course on middle games, middle game planning, with 10 different model games, with annotations videos, of course. And there are also some opening courses coming. Generally, I will try to keep it as small as possible, because there are smaller courses. So many different things are coming from me on Modern Chess. And I also generally really like their approach that, well, first of all, it's much more affordable than other websites. Chessable is cool, don't get me wrong. Of course, my Chessable course is also coming out in the near future. I know I've been saying that for quite a while, but it is. But they're focusing on other things. First of all, there is less text, I think, than on Chessable. Of course, they do sell the PGNs as well, which is quite nice for the customers. Of course, there is the trouble of pirating, but still, if you are an honest customer who just wants to buy the course and get a PGN, it's much more convenient. I thought it would get released, but then when I was in touch with the Chessable team. Sometimes they got back to me after just 1 month or so. Then I got back to them after 1 month or so. So the communication always took some time, and generally the course was quite an extensive work for me. What about this Hare Krishna game, by the way? Some of you guys have been saying that he lost against Faustino. What happened there? So it was some Spanish, c4. Never seen that move. Well, communication issues, I have to be honest, mostly on my part. Like, they were mostly quite fast with responding, but it was mostly on my part that I just have so many things going on that it was sometimes quite difficult for me to follow up with everything. Looks like quite a clean game from Faustino, yeah? Like, yeah. Faustino is strong, what can I say? Can anyone make a Chessable course, or there is average minimum rating for authors? I think anyone can make one, but I think it's a bit different. Like for me, for example, it was the case that they approached me. And if you're someone that wants to make a course on your own, basically, it might be different from the regard that probably you have to take care of everything yourself. And I don't know if they will be so much in touch with you. And help you with some of the things. Yeah, old analysis may become less relevant. That might, I mean, I was thinking that that could be an issue with my course, but I've recently checked all of the analysis again, and generally I analyzed everything with very strong engines with correspondence database. So I started with the course 3 years ago, actually, with my first analysis there. And checking it now with engines again, nothing has changed there. I can guarantee you that. Strong GMs definitely use Chessable. At least everyone has a look what different authors are recommending. I think nowadays maybe a bit less, but at least some 2 years ago or so, everyone was following what's going on there. And still, I think even top players are checking what's going on. All right, so we do have the pairings for the next round here. Magnus with the white pieces against Giri. And as you guys have pointed out correctly, a draw for Magnus is enough to secure first place. So I'm curious if Giri is going to accept the draw, because I guess that Magnus is just going to offer a draw pretty quickly in the game. I mean, it's the logical thing to do. If someone is a GM, can't he approach them? Anyone can approach Chessable for sure. I mean, but I just have no information how it is. Like if it changes, if you're a grandmaster and you're making a course for them, or if you're just someone who would like to make a course but is not known to the wider audience. I don't know about that. Yeah, checking the courses for ideas, and then if something is interesting, then you can pick it up from there. I think that's what most strong players do, yeah, and not just one-to-one copy the analysis. I think that many players do prepare like that, but not really on the grandmaster level, at least not on the higher one, because after some point you do need ideas on your own. It's not enough to rely on somebody else's work. Shankland sends all his Chessable courses to his private students for free. Think might be illegal because Chessable owns the copyright. That's true, yeah. Like I also signed the contract with them, and if I recall correctly, there are some clauses there stating that they own the rights. But yeah. I mean, to be fair, Shankland also gives them fantastic business because many people generally buy courses from him, so I'm not sure that they're so strict about that in that case. Why do people generally play in this tournament? Curious question, as you were saying. As you said already, for the top players, of course, it's about prizes. Generally, for average GMs who maybe don't have fantastic chances to get a prize, I think it's mostly about the experience there. Like, it was also the same for me, of course, when I was still a bit younger, and also now it's still about the experience and trying to improve. But generally, for many of them, I think it's, and it was also a factor for me, it's just about the experience too. That you get to play in the same playing hall as all these players. You often get the chance to play against many of them. Like last year, I played against Dominguez, for example. At some point, I played against FIDE, many strong players. So it's very much about the experience, I think, too. Any New Year's chess resolutions, Felix? Well, I did make myself the goal to reach 2600 before I reach 25 years of age, but that's still not a goal for next year, but for the one after that. But I will be working for it. I'll be working on it already next year. Hopefully we'll make some improvements on that. If buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing. I think I heard that at some point, but it's still a good one. But it's true, eh? Ah, so the issue is also in other areas, yeah? Oh, so you're an engineer. That's cool. Actual ownership was with the journal and not with you. Issue is common everywhere. I see. So we're still waiting for the next round to start. Should have started 30 minutes ago, by the way, but there was just a super long game, which messed up the schedule a bit. Thank you, Rigolos. That's very nice. That's very nice of you. Yeah, it's not all about the money, though. And I think it's just something I want to do for myself because I've already put in so much time and effort, and it feels a bit of a waste to not pursue 2600. I didn't read any of Tiviakov's books. I heard about one. Was it about rock solid chess? I think that was one of his latest books. But generally, I think that he should be a very good coach, very experienced, great understanding. Didn't read anything from him just yet, but I think it should be good, especially for the level which you were asking about, like CM, FM level should be good material. And the games are starting. So what do you guys think? Is Magnus gonna make a quick draw against Anish? Or not? Magnus still has not appeared on the board, it seems. Magnus still didn't make a move. Now. And we see the other pin, which has been Magnus's go-to opening in must-draw situations. So I think that's a reasonable choice by him. Very solid. You think hyper-aggressive chess like MVL style is still viable at the top? I've seen a neither of all but disappear from top-level play, and I don't know why. I'm not sure that it's true, because like we've seen quite a few games already by now, and there were quite a few neithers. Like also you see now Dominguez against Erdogmos. I'm pretty sure that Giri just wanted to go for the neither against Magnus too. We see a King's Indian by Shamanov. So I think chess is actually getting or staying pretty sharp nowadays. Like also if you look at Arjun's play, it's pretty damn sharp. Thank you, Regulus. I appreciate that. Glad that you find some good resources on my channel. Not trying to say you're full of it. I just try to give you another perspective. That I'm not sure that it's heading into this direction. That's a good comparison, yeah. Arjun is like a computer prep Tal, yeah. What is he doing now? He's playing against Shimanov, some King's Indian now, it seems. Best tiebreaks among the 8.5 group. That's pretty difficult to see on Lichess. I mean, according to this, it's MVL, but according to this, it's MVL, followed by Erigaisi, Shimanov, Erdogmos, Sindarov, and so on. But if that's actually the case, I'm not so sure. Yeah, I think Magnus's game is gonna end in a draw, and he's gonna get the title. I'm pretty sure about it by now. This line is extremely solid for White, and I don't see any way Magnus losing that. Yeah, King's Indian is also getting a lot of popularity nowadays. Yeah? And as you said, 96 has been played in some games. Also, Jordan van Forest played in the World Cup. One idea which I recommended in my course. But to be fair, it was like 2 weeks before my course got released, so he didn't get it from there. Fabi against Levon match in the GCT, was there also a lot of King's Indian there, or? Yeah, I've spoken already about the Bortnik course a bit earlier because I bought it yesterday, and I already spoke about some slight disappointment about that earlier because I mean, first of all, the course is really not cheap, which, okay, is fine, yeah? Like for the PGNs, I paid like $80. With the videos, it would be like $200 or something like that. But when I bought the course, then I saw that it's not even half finished, I would say. Like there were only 4 lines there, the main line, the same-ish, and 2 other lines, but all of the Fianchetto systems were missing, all of the side lines, London, Jabava London, many different main lines as well. And it just really surprised me that that he released basically a half-finished course. And then I reached out to him on Twitter. I asked like, what's going on there? And he said, okay, the rest is going to come out in January. And okay, that's at least good, but still, I was surprised, to say the very least, to release a course without it being finished. It's definitely not something I would do, but I really don't mean that in a bad way, but I was just surprised. And of course, yeah, also what you're saying, that, I mean, all of the personal things which happened are another major factor, yeah, but with Naroditsky, of course, sadly passing away. There were other courses on the Knight A6 King's Indian. I know that Bologan did a course on the King's Indian for chess base, but I thought it was not with Knight A6. I thought it was the classical one. King's Indian attack is hard to beat. Last night I played against it, and despite my advantage through the game, I couldn't break it down, and the game ended in a draw. We also see another King's Indian attack being played by none other than Fabiano Caruana. Maybe let's switch the board view again. Who is playing against Chinese Grandmaster Lu Shanglei. And it started with this move order, E2. And Fabi went for this line with C4, which immediately aims to stop Black's queenside play with B5. But his opponent tries to get it going with A6 anyway. I take C5 on the board, and I guess we can see some Benoni position arising now. '51 watching, yeah? Welcome to everyone to the stream. Final round of the FIDE World Rapid Chess Championship is going on now. My prediction is going to be that Magnus is going to get the title, because I don't see any way him losing this against Giri. Even though he did not play the main line here, he played Queen F3. I think what they're mostly doing is to go for some Queen G4. I think something like this, perhaps. But okay, there should also not be much wrong with this. Curious after A6 if he wants to take. That would be quite natural considering the tournament situation. Black is completely fine here, don't get me wrong, but Magnus should be fine too. Where are you going to see me play next? In the Czech League in January. This is where I'm going to play next. I think 8th and 9th of January, something along those lines. Gonna play some leagues in January. Okay, we see some Italian by Wesley So against Artemiev. This looks like a Spanish between MVL and Hans. Anti-marshal with h3, d3, d6. With Hans having a comfortable position. Could Anish have tried to go for another line? I mean, the other question is if Anish really wants to provoke Magnus that much. Yeah, like he has the black pieces. Already that he went for the Sicilian, because I mean, if he wants a draw, he can probably get it anytime, because if Magnus makes a draw, then he will secure the tournament victory. So I think if Anish would have, for example, played the Berlin, then Magnus just would have went for a draw immediately. But I mean, it's difficult generally in the Alapin to really create something. One of the lines where you can try to go for more of a fight is perhaps something like this. But also here, white is incredibly solid. And there are some other sidelines like e5. You can try some stuff in d5, but generally not easy in the Alapin. And a rook c1 played. Black should probably generally go for king d7 and not castle kingside, just to keep the king in the center, protect c6, and then black is definitely okay. I mean, if I would pick someone, it would probably be black here already, just because black's bishop is a bit more useful, and the pawn on d4 can always be a target. Magnus in a must draw is not vulnerable. I would not. I think he's one of the players that really know how to handle those situations, yeah. At least in the past, yeah. And with all of his experience, I don't think that this will be any different. What about Erigaisi's game? This was the one King's Indian with knight a6, bishop g5, and now queen to e8. In my King's Indian course, in fact, I'm recommending this move, I believe. I think it's c6 here, immediately. And after bishop e2, then e5. So my idea was also that after bishop e3, also here, we are going for c6. So I tried to keep it as simple to memorize as possible. We are always going for knight a6, no matter what white does here, always knight a6. And against those h3 systems, then very often we see the idea of going c6 next. Shimanov went queen to e8. And also got pretty nice King's Indian play, it seems now. Can go b6 to further strengthen the knight on c5, and looks decent. Thank you for the donation, Square64. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy the stream so far. Yeah, that's an interesting game. Sindarov against Yesipenko. Another Italian. Dominguez against Erdogmus. This was one of the Najdorf games, and this is quite a surprising thing by Erdogmus, because castling here is known to be quite an imprecise move order, because it does allow this g4 advancement immediately. Like, everyone is starting with bishop e6 here. I don't know if this was nerves, perhaps, because I mean, he is playing on board 6. Maybe it can also be that he's just tired, but this should really not happen on this level, I think. Because after bishop e6, now the thing is, if g4 happens now, then black can, first of all, h6 is not possible without being castled. Secondly, also d5 immediately is possible. But after short castle g4, now white just gets all the space on the king side immediately. Also h4, I guess, looks very decent already. It's not like black is lost or anything, but it really gives white unnecessary play immediately. Nepo is losing against Sevian. This was a Nimzo, right? Classical. I'm also recommending this line in my Nimzo course, by the way. Only that I start with dc4 and c5, short castle, knight c6, which also leads to what happened in the game. a3, bishop a5, this is the whole idea here, and after dc5, now to take here. And queen a5 is an easy way to continue here. But in my course, I actually gave this as my main move, I believe. Which solves the problems by force, basically. But I also thought that this position should generally be very much okay for black. However, probably not like this, because Nepo allowed bishop e7, which ruins the structure on the king side. And now the king is very weak. Can't I go rook d1 just here? Computer, yeah, it's also good, because it just looks so natural. But queen h5, I guess queen h4, all of them are pretty good. Caruana better against Liu Shanglei. Looks like a pleasant Benoni position. Why not the King's Indian though? Why not? You don't like the King's Indian? I think it's a good opening to play for one. While we were talking earlier, I saw this game, and the interesting thing here is that there was a game in the Vienna GM tournament that went exactly like this. And there also black played bishop e7. It was Kozak against Bormann in the last round. And even better for black would have been bishop e6, with the idea to counter e4 with d4. And now black gets a pretty decent King's Indian. But here black needs to take. Also here black is generally quite comfortable, at least for the start, but now it is playable. So this would have been a nice prophylaxis, bishop e6 back immediately. Mamedyarov winning against Serrana, that was pretty fast. So this line with dc4, this was another one of those more recent developments. d5, this is all still theory, a6. Bishop c4, however, what is this? So b5 apparently is the best move. D takes e6. And now this will probably run into queen a4. Or knight d5, yeah? Queen a4. Then king e7 steps into knight d5. Wow, that went wrong pretty quickly. Nice finish by Mamet. Bishop f7. And black resigns. King f7, knight e5. Painful way to lose the last round so quickly. The King's Indian is your main repertoire, but you want to start adding something more solid to my repertoire at some point. Well, I did record a small course on the Nimzo Bogo Indian as a repertoire on my YouTube channel. I've played the Bogo Indian throughout my whole career, basically. I started like 7 years ago. And I still think that it's an opening with a lot of flexibility and with a lot of room to play for win there. Even though it does look like a little bit of a boring opening, it's this type of opening that if you understand the plans well, or better than your opponent, then concrete knowledge, I think, is less important than understanding of the positions. That's why I've always liked it so much. Same can be said about the Nimzo Indian, more or less, if you find the right variations, which tend to be less forcing. And especially in my YouTube course, I think I managed to do that quite well, to give some pretty simple lines. Of course, in my Chessable course, it's going to be a bit different, because there it was all a bit of a deeper work. Dubov winning against Makarian. It's another type of Italian position. b3 here. That's actually cool. Black can win a piece here, I think. If you go d5, take, and now not take back, because then bishop b5 is possible. But instead b5. And after a takes b5, now to take here. And then the bishop on c4 is trapped. The funny thing still is, though, however, that white wins a lot of pawns. So even in a position like this, white still has how many pawns? 3 pawns, yeah? But it's still a cool idea. I'm not sure I've seen this so far. I guess you can also start like this and then go d5. It's probably gonna lead to the same. Yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. Zahidi Samir is doing incredibly well in this tournament. I've known him for quite a long time. I think he's my age. We've played against each other in quite a few youth tournaments as well. And he's doing really well in this tournament. Like, he must have, I think he also beat Rapport. Like, I mean, at some point he just started winning everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 games in a row against Rapport, Ivanchuk, Musar, and now he's playing against Grishuk. Interesting. Jonas Pierre winning against Nihal Sarin. That was some modern defense. Which appeared to go pretty wrong for Black. And Magnus already drew his game, which means that he is the World Rapid Champion 2025. Very deserved win, in my opinion. It was quite clear to me that he was just dominating throughout the whole event. I think he only lost 1 game against Artemiev, which also came down to just a blunder. He did not really need to lose that game. It was just him over pushing, basically. Audio is fine. Thank you, Linux Bricky, for clarifying that. Hope that it's all good. Yeah, Nexus Knight, thank you for answering a question that was actually that was probably asked to me, but I completely agree with you. If it's not going well for you, try doing things a bit differently, or just try to make a short break from everything. So Magnus is the champion. Who would have expected that? My personal prediction for the tournament was, I didn't put that onto record, but you're just gonna have to believe me, was that Magnus is gonna win 1 of 2 titles. So he's gonna win 1 gold medal. For my guess to be correct now, he needs not to win the Blitz event. Let's see how it's gonna turn out. All right. So Eric Eisy now appears to be winning against Shimanov. Bishop g6, well. What is happening in some other games? Prague, we also didn't see that game yet. Wars against Arvind. Some London system. Cannot see this anymore. So many games in London. I used to love the London, but nowadays it's just so theoretical. Some Petrov line, b4 I've also seen at some point. Strange position. Yeah, Eric Eisy is winning against Shimanov, yeah, you're right. I'm just going through some games in general. Firouzja with black, this is gonna be a grind, I think. Not sure that white is gonna lose here, but white is gonna suffer because it's this typical scenario, good knight against possibly bad bishop at least. I wouldn't call it a bad bishop just yet, but if you look at all the pawns on light squares, it could become a strategical nightmare for white. Gukesh against Kadrich. Some modern line here. I've been playing this. Modern chess at its finest. And Kadrich is actually doing pretty well here. Well, the upside of playing the London used to be that it's a less theoretical option. But that's also what is bothering me now, that the London nowadays is quite a theoretical opening. It has become a theoretical opening. My friend, if you can call it like that, Yuan Yi, what is he doing? He always likes those bishop g5 positions. He's also played like that in the World Cup against me, in the Berlin. Now it looks quite drawish though. Draken. Okay, I think this is some transmission error. It's probably ended in a draw. Matirosyan drew against Grabnev. This d4 Berlin basically we got there. Okay. Alexienko, what's he doing? Some Sicilian there too, classical Sicilian. He missed a knight check, is that possible? Queen takes f2, queen takes f2. Knight e7 check. I mean, the knight is probably still gonna get trapped, but this is a problem. Rook c7 and yeah, white is gonna be a pawn up. Motilev won against Kozakovsky, another tactic which apparently was missed. Tap in there, some Catalan. This is a pretty theoretical line as well. Black sacrificing the exchange. Rook d8, queen a3, apparently a blunder, and this is what he missed, bishop c5. Yeah, players are getting tired. There's no question about that. That's another thing which I've noticed when playing those events myself. It's an incredibly tiring tournament. Like, you are only playing 5-6 hours per day, but you have such tough opponents every round, and it's always difficult. Edis Gurel seems like he's completely crushing in this game. Rook e6. So bishop f8 was a blunder here. And after rook e6, if takes, then bishop takes f6, followed by some rook g3, or just this many threads are there. That's a nice shot. Yeah, Keimer is back to the top 30 boards, but it's a bit too late for him. Must be quite disappointed with how the tournament went. Okay. Crazy stuff. So Magnus won, Artemiev drew on the second board, which means that Artemiev probably secured the top 3 placement. Because I guess his tiebreaks must be pretty good. Okay, Vincent grinding something out of there. Which game do you guys want to go to? Maybe Hans? Should end in a draw against MVL. Every guy see will win for sure. This king on h8 should not survive here. Yeah, should be lost. Fabi is losing against Lu Shenglei. Looked like a nice position earlier. But that just appeared to be a big strategical mistake. Pushing f5. Because now black will always have this b5 break and he goes for it immediately. I mean, I guess that white should try to just wait, something like this, and black can still try to go for b5, but at least there black will always have the e6 weakness. Thank you, Linux Bricky, for sharing the link to the Discord server again. Really appreciate it. Lazovic against Abdusattorov healing up. Dubov already won against Makarian. Yeah, I think there are some... Yeah, in this game there are some transmission errors for sure. What's going on on the other boards? 31 plus. Faustino Oro. Was this a Berlin? It appears so. Against Adam Kozak, who yesterday, by the way, drew against Fabi. This could become at least a strategical masterpiece by Fausti. I mean, this bishop on c7 really has a sad outlook on the future. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question of this Hovanesian opening. I thought that you guys wouldn't really be interested in me going into this. As you all know, I also play those systems myself. I'm still planning to hopefully at some point make a full repertoire on knight f3, b3 for white. And the thing is, after bishop f5, I wanted to go for g3 too. I even played it against Dominic Hovard recently. And I did check this knight c6. And I think the best for white is probably to go for c4. And then to enter some of those lines. I think h5 is here a move, something like this, but white needs to know something here, otherwise it can go wrong if black starts pushing h5. I think a safe alternative, well, first of all, the way Musa played is probably possible, just to go h3, avoiding bishop h3. And computer says that d4 apparently is good here. In the game, sacrifice the pawn on e5. But I think another thing I was intending to do was just to play, I don't know about the move order, maybe I wanted to start with e3 or d3, not so sure. Just to play like this, I thought this was another possibility for white, then to go queen e2, knight e2, and maybe also queenside castle. It's not an advantage or anything, but I thought it's a possible and safe way to continue for white. But it's a good system for black actually, yeah. This bishop f5, knight a6, it's not as bad as it looks. I guess you should just try to study some model games to try and understand those positions better. Like, I think in those lines generally the computer is not going to be of so much help. You really need to study some model games. What is Jordan doing? Knight e2. Yeah, I've seen this line. Supposed to be quite tricky. It's bishop d3. This position tends to be a bit unpleasant with extra space for white. Yeah, are there any other interesting games? Someone in the chat wanted me to have a look at Raja Harshid's game, who actually won against David Paravian. What happened there? This is supposed to be theory for a pretty long time. Like until here, Paravian was basically blitzing. But this is a nice plan by Raja actually. Because typically they are playing with some a4, I think. But after that, black can basically exchange many pawns, and it should be fine. But this is a cool idea. Also with the idea of queen h3, not to exchange queens. That's a nice plan. Nice game. Nice game by Mr. Raja. What happened here? Lodici against Grandelius. Is this some theory or? Okay. Pantala Hare Krishna appears to be losing. I think we might have worked out some ideas here with white. He was winning. He's completely winning. Queen takes d3 had to be played. King f7, knight g5. And then just to play against a weak king. Difficult. Complete escalation, yeah. Rook h4, rook f4. Unbelievable. How are my other friends doing? Konstantin Peirer from Austria. Lost now 2 games in a row against Kozak and Martinez, and now might lose against Piliposian. I think it's also a younger player from Armenia. Some King's Indian. That went wrong pretty quickly for black. Yeah, okay. Too many games to check out. What can I say, guys? Start teaching chess on YouTube. What do you mean? That's what I'm doing all the time. How can you say that? All right, so let's go back to the top boards. I don't know who is trying in this game. Is it Hans or is it MVL or is it both? Not so sure. Nepo lost against Sevian already. Irigaisi beat Shimanov. Dominguez probably winning against Erdogmus. Yeah, which games should we go to? What do you guys want to see? Good night, Nexus Night. Thank you for joining the stream. Ray Robson. I think we haven't seen that game yet. Some Nimzo Indian. Huh. I want to check out Yesipenko's game, who is as you say, pressing against Sindarov. He's a pawn up, yeah. He's a pawn up at the very moment. But I think Sindarov will hold this. You can search all Karpov and Wolf Anderson games. All games are great strategic masterpieces. All games, you're saying even now? I don't know about all games, but definitely many of their games are pretty good. You guys want me to make like a mini series on like, let's say, my favorite games of Karpov or my favorite games of Wolf Anderson? Do you think that, guys, would be interesting? Would that be interesting, guys? I can do that at some point. Yeah, you would watch that? I'll think about it for sure. Yeah, so MVL still playing against Hans Niemann. Should be a draw. What are the other games? What can we watch? Grishuk. Another rook endgame, with Grishuk probably going to press here. Rook f4, rook f5. Can you also throw this in? It's apparently not good. Ah. You would watch that, yeah? Which player should I start with? Which player should I start with? So many rook endgames, like I've already discussed that earlier, but I've never seen so many rook endgames in one tournament. And another one, yeah. That should end in a draw. So Andreken did in fact win, but there were some transmission errors. Marazzi bind. C5 is a nice move. Changing the structure. Andreken is a very nice player. Really admire his style. Unfortunately, he's not so active anymore as he used to be. He's really a great player. Not really a concrete player, yeah, just something. I'll think about something for sure, guys. Everything at a time. And another Najdorf. But this time with the correct move order. If you guys remember, there was this game by Erdogmus who started with short castle, which is imprecise because of g4. This is the right move order. Standard Najdorf game. With Maksutlu just being the stronger player, it seems like. Yeah. Kukesh won against Kadrich. Firouzja is trying to press this endgame, which we saw earlier. How is he trying to achieve that? He could have maybe gotten somewhere if he played rook c5 here. Because if rook c5, bc5, then this b3 pawn is weak. Well, he got a similar version. Now things are heating up. King g6, rook e6, but he takes this one. And then this can fall, also rook b3 is gonna be there. Yeah, Firouzja has some chances. All right, what about the top boards? Senderov should make a draw easily against Yesipenko. Dominguez is going to win against Erdogmus. I'm curious about this game though. Zahidi against Krishuk. Objectively a draw for sure, but I'm curious what Sasha is gonna... how he's gonna try to pose problems here. But this game is gonna go on for a while, I think. It's another interesting encounter. Firouzja is getting somewhere. Knight c5, d4 coming. Yeah, are there any other games which can be interesting? Shansarxian won. Yeah, this line they are playing all the time now. Knight b8 is a bit surprising. Typically they go knight e7. Yeah, basically a King's Indian gone wrong for black. What is happening in Oof, oh my god. 3 queens on the board. How did white make another queen here? That's incredibly complicated. So apparently a8 queen was actually a mistake, because now it's objectively a draw. Good luck finding all of that. So rook g4 was the mistake. Queen d2 is the only way to hold, and if queen d3 now there's rook g4. So king e5, queen e3, king d6, rook d1. Okay, black has to find so many only moves. Like also that this is a draw is unbelievable. Now it's actually losing because of this, and then there's queen g8. That's pretty funny. So this and this and... never seen a perpetual like this. Now Vincent should be winning. The king will probably escape. King f7 and king 8 and no more checks. Well, rook e6 is still there, but then rook e7. King f7 is the only winning move though, but he finds it. Well, also sort of obvious, because if king e7, then maybe white would even be in trouble after queen d6. It's just checkmate. Yeah, exactly what we've been saying, and now Vincent is winning. Quite a picturesque finish here. So Grishuk is still grinding this. Jonas Pierre also still playing. I mean, he was winning earlier. Basically crushing attack, but at some point Nihal escaped. Yeah, Nihal is very good at defending those positions. And if white is not careful, then this d-pawn could also pose some difficult problems. Another rook endgame. between Mamedov and San al-Wahab. Yeah, and those endgames are probably the easiest to hold. Those doubled pawns are actually good for white here. This 4 versus 3 with doubled pawns is a pretty basic draw for white. You just need to sit and wait, basically. And that's exactly what's happening. Not sure that it's gonna be so easy in Grishok's game though, because still 2 rooks are on the board. Should definitely be a draw, but black can still try something. Sunday study, is it still on for this week? I've already recorded it today. It's gonna come online after my live stream. I just need to finish up everything, and then it's gonna come online. For this week, very nice study again. Pretty happy with my pick. Hope you're enjoying the format. I see that it's not attracting as much as many viewers as some of the other videos, but I still hope that at least for some of you it can be interesting. I think it's a cool format. That's why I keep on publishing the videos, but I'm glad to hear that you're asking about it, which implements that hopefully you are looking forward to this week's edition. Famous study of Mitrofanov. I know the composer, but I'm not sure which study you are referring to. I think he has quite a few studies. Yeah, so this game is gonna go on for a while longer. In the meantime, let's have a look at the 31 plus games. So board 31 and more. Kozak actually won against Faustino. So we saw the position a bit earlier. Somewhere here, but b4 was maybe a bit too optimistic. I mean, Fausti played a great game for a long time, but at some point didn't find to see the right breakthrough. G3 apparently was working here. And now white is not taking. Immediately f4. And white can even give up the pawn and just argue that black has no space whatsoever, and he's just gonna crash through on the king side. Later on, Faustino lost. Darda lost too. What opening was that? Another knight f3, b3. Yeah, what a game. Maneuvering all the time. Is the variation with knight bd7 and the queen's gambit decline becoming more popular? Definitely, yeah. It's being played quite often now, nowadays. Also in this tournament, I've seen quite a few games there. What was this game? This is all some theory, I think. Huh. Yeah. Look forward to it every week. Also the Rook Endgame study series. Happy to hear. Definitely more Rook Endgames are gonna come. Still need to record the 3 versus 3 plus the extra A pawn. But I still need to be sure what to present there. Like I really need to study the material because it's not so easy. Chanda Sandipan is a very interesting player. And I've seen this system already yesterday. I've already kind of made a bookmark for myself to have a look at this. I called it improved Fort Knox. The immediate Fort Knox is this bishop d7, bishop c6, which is playable, but generally a bit passive for black. But to me, it seemed like here you can always go for this bishop d7, bishop c6, and it might be a better version than compared to some other, compared to the normal Fort Knox. Actually, let me save this game. I will look at this later on. So I think the line has some practical value. Yeah, are there some other games? Hare Krishna lost against Bharat Subramanian. Disappointing tournament for him. Also Rasmus Svane, who typically does pretty well in those rapid and blitz events. Didn't have a great tournament. Konstantin Paira also lost. Austrian player. All right. So let's go back to the other boards, and as expected, Grishuk is still playing. And this endgame, don't think is so simple. White is a pretty good version overall. If this pawn is on h4 and the white pawn is on h3, then it's more difficult. Here, okay, you need to watch out. Rook a4 runs into rook d4. Do you have some news about the Nimzo course? We talked about it earlier. I have the PGNs for all of the analysis finished. They even uploaded the course already to Chessable. So, but only it's like for private access. I had a look at it yesterday. It looks pretty cool overall. I just need to finish the model games. I need to finish some text I need to write, like introduction and so on, and I need to record the videos. But after that is done, it's good to go. Sandipan was Vishy's second. Yeah, I've heard about that, which is actually quite surprising to me with the fact that Sandipan to me seems like quite an aggressive and very creative player. And not the type of player I would necessarily expect to second someone, because he has pretty outlandish ideas. Like against Prague in this tournament, he beat Prague with the following idea. He played this against Prague. Now, bear with me. He played knight to a5. Knight takes e5 and knight takes e4, and he just went into this position, basically pawn down. And then played some bishop d7, queen set castle, h5, h4. It's not good at all for black, like +1. He was also basically losing later on, but then managed to outsmart Prague at some point. I also played Sandipan last year in New York and lost there. By the way, Grishuk is now winning because Sahidi put the king to e3. It's still okay here, but you really need to go back with the king to f2 as soon as possible. I mean, the king belongs to g3 in this endgame. Already now it would be too late, because now king f4 is coming, and if rook check, then black can block it with rook d4. So you just need to stay with the king here. Like go king g3, rook e6, and then somewhere like this, yeah? Because the king on e3 is not protecting the h4 pawn. This is the problem in the game. Now it's already still back to a draw, because white can again go king f2. But black could have won with rook d4, which is actually quite simple. Take king f4, and then you just win the pawn endgame. And king d5, take here, 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 and winning. Now it's back to a draw. I mean, that's not good for Mr. Grishuk. I mean, this is generally a bit of a strange move, king e6. Maybe he just didn't see the idea to break through with rook d4. I mean, Surely he didn't see it, otherwise he would have went for it, but because it's probably the only winning idea. Like also here, if white just waits, at some point you need to go for rook d4. Yeah, Sandeepan won against Prague with this strange Italian, yeah? Knight a5. And now it should be a draw still. We're gonna watch the rest of the game because I'm getting more and more interested in Rook End games in the past few weeks. Still some chances for Grishuk here for sure, practically speaking. To study white a7, b6, c6, queen g8, king f5, black king a8, bishop e8, h5. Yeah, I know that study, yeah. I know that study. I've seen it at some point. Yeah, this is the only remaining game in the top 30 boards. All the other games have finished. And actually interesting is that black cannot even go after this pawn, because after you take on h4, the rook is just gonna get trapped there. It's never gonna get out anymore. I mean, black is also not losing because white cannot pick up the rook, but black cannot make any progress. And I assume he didn't want to go for king g1 here, because that could allow this as an idea. Still, white can just go away with the rook, but that's why he went for this. Now king g1 though, rook d2. Akaryashkina won the women's rapid. I didn't even follow the standings closely there so much. Thank you for letting us know. Hans almost got third, so it's already clear, the final standings. So Magnus is first. What are the other placements? I guess that Artemiev is in the mix. Artemiev must be top 3 for sure. But who are the others? I can see it in the players tab. So according to this, it should be Artemiev, Erigaisi. Yeah, Magnus, Artemiev, Erigaisi should be. I mean, I'm never so sure about the Leech's view because sometimes if a game is put incorrectly, like if there are some live transmission errors, then it completely messes up the whole tie breaks. That's why I'm often a bit careful. So yeah, looking at this, it's Niemann who just barely missed out on third place. A pity for him, obviously. Definitely did deserve that, but Argent 2, Artemiev 2. That's always the thing. Yeah, should be treated as provisional, but most likely gonna be true. There's no doubt that Magnus is first. Respectfully, if Hui Fan or Judith Polgar are not playing, I don't think I've ever looked at women chess. Yeah, many people do say that. It's not necessarily the case for me though. Like, I am mostly following all top female events. It's just if the Rapid and Blitz is going on, I already have so much to go through in the men's section. And therefore, I just briefly look at the women's section in most cases. But for example, women's Grand Prix and those events, I'm always following all of the games. Yeah, so what is... How many moves do we got here already? Still, Sasha can try a lot here. F4 was played on move 96. And now we're only 10 moves later. Still, it's gonna be difficult to even find a winning plan now. Pushing e4 at some point, but not even gonna be easy to play that without white winning a pawn or something. Like if, for example, if now e4, then white can just give a check here and then take on e4 in the next move. King e6. Yeah, rook b5, very professional. Just stopping the king from entering on d5. Yeah, tiebreaks remain on remaining games as well. That's true. Most of the games are finished though. I did not now check in the 30 in the boards above 31. I didn't check there yet. So it could be, especially if it's only half a point, which Hans is missing, it could be that he can still make it. Felix, do you in general follow some tournaments, the top 5 boards of the Wilton Cup for opening ideas? All the time, man. I always do that. Even if someone is not a grandmaster, it doesn't mean that they cannot come up with interesting ideas. Actually, let me check the Wilton Cup now, just on my phone. So my friend Dominic Horvath texted me already that, I mean, he's playing in the Wilton Cup and he lost against a 2300 opponent who apparently played a perfect game against him. Let me check. Also, our talented youngster Lukas Stotzer is playing in the event, who has just achieved his second GM norm in the Vienna GM tournament, and is definitely looking to get the last one soon. Maybe this is his tournament. Looks like he played a nice game. Wilton Cup, I think it used to be stronger back in the day. It's still a good tournament, but... Yeah, Dominic Horvath's game unfortunately was not live, so I cannot see it. Hey Sudo, welcome to the stream. We're almost wrapping up, just finishing this game. Now, actually something could happen here. How did this... Okay, he went for it immediately. He tried to now finish the game with king d3, king e4. This would have kept the status quo. Now, okay, it's still a draw, but now at least it's gonna be a bit more concrete. Yeah, to answer your question, I'm looking at all of the major tournaments that are going on, always. Yeah, Sahidi is defending this well. I mean, now he is. Earlier he did allow this one trick, as we've seen, like here, it's important to stay with the king on g3. And here, Krishuk had a chance to win with rook d4. When the pawn endgame is winning. Now, however, don't even see. any idea for black, because after take, it's a pretty basic draw. King is just not active enough. Did either of the players play against Hans? It doesn't appear to be that way, because this could still influence. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be that way. This could still influence the standings. Yeah, anything is now a draw, I guess. Okay, this would be professional way. This type of Lucena position. Then king f4, king f3. All of Erigais's and Hans's opponents finished their games. Okay, then probably it's over. A rook a5 played by Zahidi. I mean, there's only one trick you need to watch out for. Like, you cannot do it like this. Maybe you... you actually still can. I thought this is losing, but there's still rook d8. Then king f2, which is still a draw. Okay, so now king f3 and it's over. Grishuk against Zahidi, draw. All right, so that's it for the World Rapid Chess Championship 2025. Magnus won. Who would have expected? Again, my prediction was, I didn't put that on record, but my prediction was that Magnus is going to win one of the two events. So for my prediction to come true, he needs not to win the Blitz. Let's see how that's going to turn out. So I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Hope it was entertaining and or what's the word for it? I'm already pretty tired. And or educational. That's what I'm looking for. Arjun is third, yeah. Magnus first, Artemiev second, Arjun third. That's it from me today. Study Sundays is coming out in a matter of minutes, I hope. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really enjoyed it. Thank you all for taking part in the stream, for your commenting and so on. I will be back maybe for some commentary during the Blitz, or I will make some videos on that afterwards. Yeah, Theodora idea, we already went over it. I think it's interesting, but I'm not sure that it's still completely new. I think there were some games already with this h4. I need to check that, but I don't think it's completely new. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys soon.